Hey everybody, this is Josie and welcome back to Cedar Creek Homestead. Well, the heat's on this morning and I woke up to 38 degrees. It's getting kind of serious. Next couple of days we've got some nasty temperatures and I've got a lot of work to do. Well, by the time you've seen this, I've done the work. But I've got to go out and get things prepared because overnight tonight it's supposed to drop down to 29 degrees, and we know that the tender vegetation that we've got out in our garden and other areas won't live with that, and so we've got a lot of covering up to do and to try to protect these things. Now, Blade, he has always accused me and his dad of being hoarders, and of course, we're not hoarders. Most of you know that if you live on a farm or you live on a homestead or you have this kind of lifestyle, then you know that you keep things that have some value. Now, you don't keep thousands and thousands of those things, but you do keep those things. And so we have a stack out in our shop of coffee cans, and we have old sheets and towels and baskets and buckets and things that can be used that have more than one use for them. And so we're going to be using those coffee cans today out in the garden, and buckets. We will be covering our tomatoes. I don't have all of my tomatoes planted because we happened to see that the weather report before we got our second batch put in the ground that we had possible freezing weather coming, and so all of those are nice and safely tucked away and protected, but the ones that are in the ground need our help, and so I'll be going out covering them. I'd say I probably have 40 or 50 already planted, and we'll get those covered. And yes, we grow a lot of tomatoes here. We do a lot of tomato products, and we put up a lot of just plain canned tomatoes, but we do other things with them, and our household and Tex and Terry's household. And then I also try to share with some of our friends at the church that can't grow gardens for themselves, and so we'll have plenty of tomatoes, but we've got to protect them, and so we'll be covering those. The cabbages should be okay, and I think that our onions will be all right. We have of course, you saw me plant the marigolds, and I'll have to take the old sheets out, and you can use pieces of fabric too, or you can use towels, whatever you have on hand, just get those things covered up. And so I'll have to go out and cover my marigolds. I lost all of my elephant ears during that cold snow and ice and stuff that we got, that remember back to when Texas had all of their problem, and we had that problem too, and so all of my elephant ears, they all froze, and so I don't have to worry about them. But I have other things that are coming up that'll have to be covered, and then I'll have to try to figure out how to keep Foxy and Sadie from pulling the covers off of everything to play with them. We have fruit trees that have fruit hanging on them. Of course, they're just teeny tiny right now, but all of those things will be in jeopardy. And the strawberries and my grapevines are just loaded with little tiny grape clusters, teeny tiny. They don't even look like, they look like green grape nuts right now. That's what they look like to me. But all of that stuff is in jeopardy if we don't take the time, take the effort, and go out and cover those things. And that's what we, that's an important thing that we have to pay attention to on your farm and your homestead, is the weather and all of the things that can surely cause damage. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit today about what would you do if you lost your harvest. And I thought of a couple of stories about losing harvest. When Howie and I lived in Arkansas, and we had our business there, and we were working in the church, and we had lived there I'm from there, and that's the area that we were living in, but we had pastored different churches, and we had our business, and I had worked for the home office at Walmart, and we had done, we did different things. Howie worked for Sears for a while as a repairman, and so we had done all those things, but we had always tried to garden and have somewhat of a farming lifestyle as much as we could in that area. But the last place that we lived at, where our home was located at the time that we we had a little small farm there, and we had pigs and chickens and ducks and goats and dogs and rabbits, and I guess a lot of the same things that we do here. We just didn't have as much land. And we had a garden. We had a good garden. We had a rocky garden. The soil, our garden was really rocky there, but boy, it grew good tomatoes, and it grew up good corn and other things. And we had we had put up a good harvest the previous year, and we're growing the harvest the story I'm telling you now. We had grown the harvest and had taken some stuff out and put up already, and the business was going gangbuster, and that area was just crazy growing, and it still is. Northwest Arkansas is just growing everywhere. Well, there was lots of work for everybody to do, and there were houses being built everywhere you looked. There were subdivisions going in, and there was plenty to do, plenty of work. And all of a sudden, it just seemed like the faucet shut off, and it just dried up. And that hurt us. We had obligations. We had people that were working for us, and we had things that we had to do. And there were several times where there wasn't a paycheck for us because we had to make sure that our employees got paid. And so, as time went, the business just kind of died out, really. And, we had to let people go. And that was so hard to do that because, well, most of the people that worked for us were related to us, and we loved them, and some of my brothers and different ones, and we hated to see that happen, but it did. But we were able to survive by living off of that harvest that we had, and because we had that, we were able to use the money that we had for our bills and things to be taken care of, and not be spending it on food and supplies because we had put those things back. And then in August of that year, unexpectedly, our house burned down. And not only did we lose our house and our clothes and our pictures and everything that we had, we also lost all of the stuff that we had put back from harvest. And so the things that we had been living on all this time, now all of a sudden we lost those things too. And that was a hard blow. But we were able to come out of that. We moved to Oklahoma and started over and was able to rebuild with God's help, and we did well, and I'm still doing good now. Of course, all the things that's happened this last year, I've went through another storm and I've had to readjust again, but God has been faithful, and he's been good to me and to Blade and Cheyenne and our family, and even in the loss of my sweet Howie, God is providing for us, and I'm thankful for that. Doesn't mean he doesn't require us to work. We're having to work. We're having to stretch ourselves in areas that we never thought we would have to stretch ourselves before. But God is providing, and God is faithful. So I thought about this, losing the harvest, and I remember Howie telling a story about his sweet little neighbor lady, Miss Chism. She was a neighbor that everybody wants to have, her and her husband, and she was like a grandma to some and an aunt to others, and she was just a beautiful person. And she had suffered loss in her life. I think Howie said that they had suffered several house fires when they were young and bringing their children up, and that they had lived on their harvest because of the fires and different things. They had lived on their harvest because they didn't have anything else, and they lived on canned tomatoes and cornbread. Now, I love canned tomatoes and I love cornbread, but I don't know for how long I would love either one of them if that's what I had to eat. But that's what they had to do, and sometimes you'll find yourself having to make do with what you've got until you can get a new harvest. So Miss Chisholm, they lived on this, and her husband oftentimes took jobs and worked off. And I know at one time he worked up in Alaska on the pipeline, and so he was gone. Now this particular story, I don't know if he was here and things were just difficult, or he was actually off But she said that she had been feeding the kids, these tomatoes and cornbread, and they had just very minimal selection of things to eat. And she was wanting to give her kids something really good to eat. And I don't know if it was around holiday time or what, but she told the story that she was in the bedroom praying and really just going before the Lord and petitioning Him to provide something special for her children, and that they needed some meat. And as she was praying, she said her children come running in and said, "Mama, something fell out in the yard." And so she went out there, and there lay a goose in their yard. And so what did she do? She plucked all the feathers off, cleaned it, and she cooked up that goose for her family. Well, she said that she no doubt that goose had been flying, and probably some hunter shot that goose, and that it just so happened to fall in their yard. Well, some of us believe that it was by God's providence that happened, and she'd prayed and God had heard her, and He provided that goose for her. I think that that's such a wonderful story, and I just wanted to share that little bit with us. But God, most of the time, God requires us to do some work. And a goose isn't always going to fall in our yard. We have to do a little bit of the work to take in the harvest. And so I would ask you today, what would you do if you lost your harvest? That's a hard question sometimes to answer, because instantly we begin to fear, and we begin to, wring our hands and get concerned. And I am in no means trying to cause anybody any added stress or anxiety. I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. I'm just trying to say, hey guys, let's pay attention to the things that's going on around us. There are storms brewing. And, I'm not going to get into politics. I'm not getting into any of that kind of stuff. But just to say, look at the things that's going on. Go to your local lumber supply company and try to buy a load of lumber. The lumber prices have skyrocketed. And one way I know that is because we have been in need of lumber. We've got projects on our farm that need to be taken care of. I got a couple of, I guess I have 3 projects that are half done and needing more lumber, and we'll get it. But it's not, your dollar is not buying as much lumber as it used to buy. And so lumber costs are up. But everywhere you go, you're seeing houses being built. And around here, I don't know if it's this way in your area, but people are putting houses on the market, and they're not staying anytime. They're getting sold just, I won't say instantly, but they're not staying on the market for very long. People are moving and rearranging, getting into different places. I really think a lot of people are moving to places where they can grow gardens and they can have animals. And there's so many places they're getting so strict on their ordinances, their city ordinances and their HOAs and all these other things that they have, where even chickens are banned. And so people are moving to areas, but lumber costs are up. The price of groceries are up. The price of gas, the price of goods, all of these prices are up and going up and going up and going up. And it costs more for us to live. And so what do we do? What do we do when we're saying we've got to bring in a harvest? We've got to build these projects on our homestead. We've got fencing that has to go up. We have a vehicle that needs to be repaired. Just on and on and on. There's storms that come up in your life. There's warnings that you get flashing across your TV screen, so to speak, or your radios or whatever, that's warning you about the things that are coming. And we need to be aware of those things, just like we needed to be aware that this frost was coming and we needed to take action, get a plan and take action. Well, we need to get a plan and take action for the storms that are brewing now. Now, all of the, there's so many things that are going on today, the riots and and other things. Then we know that there's court decisions that are coming down that may get, depending on what way these decisions go, with in the criminal courts. Depending on that, there could be riots, and there could be dangerous situations and things that could get terribly, terribly ugly in a hurry. We have all kinds of questions about finances, and questions and about health, and all of these things just rolling over and over and over. And so we say, what do we do? How do we bring in the harvest? And now I hope you figured out that I'm not just talking about food. I'm talking about our day-to-day life. How do we go about it? How do we make sure that we're looking well to the ways of our household? How do we make sure that we get from point A to point B without getting mired down in all of the mess that's going on around us? Well, first thing we have to do is we have to start now. We have to roll up our sleeves, and we have to go to work. Now, in the physical, when you are thinking about harvest, well, we know that not everybody lives on a farm, and not everybody lives on a homestead. Some of you don't even live where you could grow a garden, and you have to rely on the grocery store, the farmer's market, and there is nothing wrong with that. I, for one, am never going to make you feel guilty that you buy your stuff from the grocery store. You have to provide for your family, and you have to provide for your family by any means that you can. It would be wonderful if you could say, hey, on Cedar Creek Homestead, I grow and provide everything that my family could possibly need or want. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But in reality, that's just not so. I have to rely on the supply chain just like everybody else. And if something happens to the supply chain, and we know from experiencing things this last year that sometimes things do happen in the supply chain. Was it the trucker's fault? No. Things happen. And we need to quit pointing fingers. We need to roll up our sleeves and say, we have to go to work. I know that these are the things that my family needs. And you know that there are things that your family needs. If you're, my sweet little daughter-in-law loves ranch dressing. She eats it on everything. So I know that I need to make sure that I have means to have ranch dressing for her. Now, is she going to make it if say something happens and the world comes crashing down around our ears? Is she going to make it if she doesn't have ranch dressing? Of course she will. But wouldn't it be nice to have some things to make things go down a little bit easier if we didn't like something but had to eat it? If she had something that's going to make it more palatable for her? So what can I do? Well, I can find ways to provide ranch dressing, because you know that, store-bought ranch dressing isn't something that's shelf stable. You can't have 3 years worth of ranch dressing on your shelf and expect for it to stay good all that time. So what I need to do is say, this is a recipe for ranch dressing, and I can make a powdered version, and we can have that. And so those are things that I'm doing. You can do the same thing. Maybe your kids won't eat something unless they have a lot of ketchup or syrup or whatever. So start doing those things. Look for ways to add to your pantry. Look for ways to make sure that you have the things that your family's going to need when the storms of life are here, because we know they're on the horizon. We know, we can see, we can hear, we can judge. We know that those things are on their way, and we don't want to lose the harvest. We don't want to not make any preparations. Now, those of us that have gardened and farmed for a long time, we know that we have X amount of certain thing that we want to grow. Now, what we try to do is say, we want to grow so many tomato plants. Now, I grow over 100 tomato plants, probably about 150. But I have a lot of products that I make. I make rotel, and I make salsa, and I make spaghetti sauce, and I have whole tomatoes, and I have diced tomatoes, and all kinds of products that I use the tomatoes for. But I know that I don't want to just make it to go to garden season of the next year. Say, what I'm planting this year in 2021, yes, I want enough product to last me this whole year, but I want to make enough product to go this year and beyond the garden season next year, because next year's harvest might be in jeopardy. So I need to prepare past that. I hope that makes sense to you. You know, you make sure that you go beyond that. I don't know if we will ever get to the point, maybe some people will, but I don't know that I will ever get to the point where I say, I have enough. I can sit back and say, I'm good. I don't have to do anything else. I don't think I will, and I really don't think you will either. You know, if as long as we're preparing and we have the things that our family eats, that our family needs, you know, our first aid and medications, all of the things that we need for the different seasons of the year. Now we're almost done with this cold snap here, and I don't know about you guys, but Oklahoma will be heading into hot weather, and I do winter a lot better than I do summer. I don't like the heat. I don't like to be hot. And so that opens up a whole new area of possibilities of prepping and being prepared of things to keep you cool in the summertime. And what ifs? What if there was no electricity? How are you going to keep yourself cool? Because I don't know about you guys, but I love air conditioning. I'm not going to lie. I love it. And I sure would miss it if it was gone. So there's all kinds of things that we need to consider. But don't be discouraged. I am in no way trying to scare you. I'm just saying, hey, let's be encouraged to keep working, to keep doing all that we can to ensure the next harvest. And number one, we need to rely on the Lord and ask for His help. Then, hey, you know, we've rolled up our sleeves, we've made a plan. Make a plan for your family. Get yourself going. Grow your own food if at all possible. But if you can't, don't feel guilty. Look for bargains, look for sales on the products that your family uses. Now, my sister-in-law is a couponer, and she does a fabulous job. I have tried couponing, and I have been successful in some things, but she puts deals together, and it just, I can't comprehend the deals. I really can't. But I've seen stashes of different people that are couponers, and everything looks great. You know, they have their shelves that are just, it looks just like a grocery store. You know, they've got their health and beauty products, and they've got their cleaning products, and they've got all these things, and that is great. But I wonder, you know, a lot of times if we're smart on our couponing, we're only couponing the things that we know we're using. Or when we coupon, we're doing it in a way where we can donate, or we can get whatever you do. But it's not going to do any good to have a whole wall full of beautiful products if you don't use the products, and your family's lacking in food or water or whatever because we got all of this stuff that we don't really use or that we don't like. And so, you know, coupon, shop the sales, look for sales, and when something is on sale, you know, try to have a little bit of money put back so that when you have sales at the store, that it's a really good sale. Say for instance peanut butter or something like that. Well, instead of going and buying 1 or 2 containers, maybe you buy 6 containers. And some of you are probably thinking that is crazy, but if you're really putting back for your family and you're trying to go for an extended amount of time, then 6 canisters of peanut butter is not out of the realm of possibilities. My family, my son loves peanut butter, and 6 peanut butters would not be unrealistic for him to go through in 6 months' time. He could have 6 containers of peanut butter eaten. So shop the sales. And then the final thing I would say is work together with others. You know, your family, other people that you've built a community with. And I'll give you this story. I had to call Papa Tex to get the details because I've heard the story several times, but I wanted to make sure I had everything just right. The year that Howie was born, 1969, Miss Chism and her husband had moved in right across the dirt road from where Howie's house sat when he was a little boy. And Papa Tex had his garden right in the same space where Howie and I have our garden today, just a lot smaller. Well, she loved tomatoes. Remember, I told you that earlier in life she had raised her children on the tomatoes and cornbread. So she still loved tomatoes. And of course, our family loved tomatoes. And so Tex, he grew his garden, and him and Miss Chisholm worked together, and he grew these tomatoes. And he said that they were so bushy and so full that you couldn't even get between the rows. You had to go out on the outside and pick them. And he said for about a month, from June till about the middle of July, I guess. And the reason he could remember that is because Howie's birthday is July 18th, and Howie was born in this time frame. And so every day before Tex went to work, he would go out and he would pick tomatoes. He would pick tomatoes for his family, and he would pick tomatoes and take them over to Miss Chisholm. And every day for a month, he picked 2 5-gallon buckets of tomatoes just to take to her, not counting all of his tomatoes that he was taking to his family. And so for a month, Miss Chisholm every single day was putting up 10 gallons of tomatoes a day she was putting up for a month. And he said finally she said, Tex, she was thankful, but she had had enough. So they worked together. That's a beautiful story. I love that. I remember when I was a kid and our family grew field corn, and it was good. We ate it, they used it. When it would dry, they'd feed it to the cows. I grew up on a dairy farm, and they would let this corn dry and feed it to the animals. But we also harvested some of it. Now, it's different than sweet corn. It's not like, the corn that you get and butter it all up and it's sweet. We still buttered this up and ate it. It just wasn't sweet. And it was good. Us kids ate it. And there was a lot of kids in not just my immediate family, but my cousins, there was a bunch of us. And so everybody came together and worked, and they brought in just hundreds and hundreds of ears of corn. And of course, us girls shucked the corn, and the boys they helped around there and carried out the husk and all of this stuff, and the ladies worked it up, and they were canning and freezing and doing stuff, and we all got together and enjoyed working together to provide for the going into the winter time. And so I think that's what's going to have to be required again, is for people to work together and do all that we can to look well to the ways of our household. And I don't think we'll lose the harvest. Everybody just do what you can. I know I got to go out here and get all this stuff covered, and so that it'll be protected, and then work this summer and do all the stuff that I can to provide for my family. And I know that you guys are going to do the same thing. I hope that I said something tonight that it would encourage you to keep working towards providing, keep putting up in your pantry, regardless of the storms that are coming. We need to make sure that we've got food and water and basic supplies, and keep ourselves encouraged, keep encouraging one another, and we'll be okay. I wanted to say before I got out of here that I got on a new apron today. Thanks to one of my subscribers, Diana. She sent me a box that had a beautiful quilt and several aprons, 3 aprons, and so I put this one on today, and I wanted to make sure I said thank you to her. I love everybody. Y'all have been so good to me, and I just want to say I appreciate it all, and God bless you. If you like what I'm doing, then subscribe and come back and see me again, and we'll until next time. This is Josie with Cedar Creek, and we're gone.